When my father told me he had arranged my marriage, I didn't argue right away. I just nodded, half listening, assuming he meant someone close to my age, someone I could eventually connect with. But then he said something that made my chest tighten. She's older, much older. I laughed at first, thought it was some kind of joke, but his face stayed serious. That's when I realized this wasn't about love, it was about debt, about honor, about fixing something that had nothing to do with me. She was the daughter of a man who once helped my family when we had nothing. And now, after all these years, my father felt he owed that man everything, including me. I didn't know what to say. I felt numb, not because she was older, but because I didn't get a choice. Because I was being handed over like a repayment plan, instead of a son with his own dreams. I met her a few days later. She didn't smile much. She carried herself with calm and control, as if nothing could shake her. And while her face showed age, her eyes held something deeper, like she had seen things, felt things, survived things. She looked at me and said softly, "I didn't ask for this either." And suddenly everything in me changed. This wasn't a story about a boy being forced. It was two people caught in something they didn't choose. I started watching her more closely. How she moved, how she moved, how she noticed details, how she stayed quiet when she could have complained. There was pain in her, but there was also wisdom, strength. And somewhere between the awkward dinners, the long silences, and the moments we both avoided eye contact, we started talking. Not about the marriage, but about life, about regrets, about freedom. And for the first time, I saw her not as the old woman my father arranged for me, but as a human being who had lost her youth to other people's decisions too. She never talked much about her past at first. She'd sit across from me at the table, eating slowly, almost like she was just passing through life, not really living it. But one night, when the electricity went out, we sat outside under a dim sky with nothing but the sound of wind and crickets between us. I asked her softly, "Were you ever in love?" She looked away for a moment and then said, "Once, a long time ago. But I wasn't allowed to choose him." That sentence sat between us like a quiet truth, and in that moment I realized something important. We were two people both being punished for choices we never got to make. She told me stories, little by little, how her younger days were spent in silence, how she'd cared for a sick parent while her own dreams faded, how everyone in her life treated her like a role, a daughter, a caregiver, a helper, but never as a woman who had feelings of her own. She didn't cry when she told me. She wasn't bitter, she just told it the way it was, like someone who had finally made peace with her own pain. I listened and something in me shifted. This wasn't about age anymore. This was about two people who had both been left behind by the people they were supposed to trust most. And for the first time since the arrangement, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt connected. She began asking about me too, not just surface questions. She wanted to know my thoughts, what I feared, what I dreamed about when no one else was listening. It surprised me how easy it was to talk to her, how I didn't feel judged, how she didn't try to fix me or laugh at the way I still held on to little boy hopes. She just saw me, and that kind of being seen, it does something to your chest. It opens doors you didn't even know were closed. I stopped calling her the old woman in my mind. She became something else, something softer, something stronger. Not someone I expected, but someone I was beginning to understand. After that night, something between us shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly, like rain softening dry ground. We stopped pretending. No more polite, distant conversations. No more awkward silences. Now there was a quiet honesty between us. A shared knowing we're here. Not by choice, but maybe we can still choose each other. She started making small changes in the house. Not because she wanted to take over, but because she noticed what I ignored. She folded my clothes before I even reached for them, left tea on the table without asking, reminded me to take my vitamins when I forgot. Not once did she say, "I do this for you." She just did it. And somehow those small things began to feel bigger than any love letter I'd ever read. I found myself watching her more, noticing how she tied her hair when she was focused, how she spoke with calm even when things went wrong, how she held herself together, not because life had been kind, but because she had taught herself how to stand when no one helped her up. And all I could think was, she's given me more peace in silence than anyone else ever gave me with 1,000 words. It wasn't love in the traditional way, not fireworks, not butterflies, just this steady hum, a comfort I didn't know I needed. One night, as I was about to go to sleep, she walked by my door, paused, and said quietly, "You don't have to pretend with me anymore. If this life is heavy for you, you can say that." And for the first time, I let it out. All of it. The pressure, the confusion, the guilt, the strange ache in my chest. Every time I thought of how things were supposed to be, she didn't interrupt. She didn't give me answers. She just listened. Then said softly, "You're not the only one healing." After that night, everything felt different, but in the softest, calmest way possible. We didn't say the word love. We didn't rush into anything. But there was something warm between us now. Something you couldn't see, but you could feel, a new rhythm. We began doing little things together. Simple things that didn't feel like much on the outside, but on the inside, they were everything. She'd water the plants in the morning, and I'd make sure her tea was steeped just the way she liked it. She'd sit next to me while I worked, not saying a word, just being near, and that was enough to make my breathing feel easier. Sometimes we'd talk late at night. Not deep talks, just presence, stories, laughter, and sometimes silence. But even that felt safe with her. She stopped being a stranger. She stopped being the older woman my father picked. She became the person I looked for when the day was too heavy and I didn't want to carry it alone anymore. I began noticing things. The small scar on her wrist, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about books she read in her younger days, the way she always knew when to speak and when to just sit beside me without a word. And one day I caught myself smiling just watching her from across the room. That's when I realized I didn't feel trapped anymore. I felt safe. I felt chosen. Even if this life started without choice. It wasn't the kind of love they show in movies. No big moments. No dramatic music. Just two people slowly rebuilding from broken beginnings. And in that quiet rebuilding, something sacred started to grow. She was teaching me how to love without demand. And I was learning how to receive love without shame. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started wondering, what if this was meant for me? It's strange, isn't it? How life gives us things we don't want, only to reveal they're exactly what we needed all along. She wasn't part of my plans, not even close. But somehow, she became part of my peace. I used to look at other couples, young, loud, carefree, and wonder if I was missing out. But now I looked at her, calm, thoughtful, still, and I felt found. There was a depth in her love that didn't come from fairy tales. It came from years of loss, from strength learned in silence, from healing she never got credit for. And maybe that's what makes her different. She doesn't need to prove anything. She doesn't love loudly. But when she does, you feel it in her eyes, in her actions, in the way she always leaves a light on for me, even if she falls asleep before I get home. I sat beside her while she rested, just watching her chest rise and fall slowly. And I thought to myself, maybe love isn't something you chase. Maybe it's something you grow into. Maybe it's someone who stays, even when they didn't have to. And that's who she was. She could have resented me. She could have shut me out. She could have kept living in bitterness, stuck in a life she never asked for. But she didn't. She chose peace. She chose softness. She chose me, even when the world had chosen for us. And now I was beginning to choose her too. One evening after dinner, she was sitting by the window, book in hand, hair loosely tied, her glasses sliding a little down her nose. She looked peaceful. So peaceful it made something in my chest ache. I stood there for a moment watching her, realizing how much I had grown to love that calm presence. Not the kind of love that sweeps you off your feet, but the kind that keeps you grounded even when life gets loud. I sat beside her, didn't say anything at first, just looked out the window with her, letting the silence hold us. Then I spoke. I never thanked you. She turned to me, eyebrows raised gently. For what? I hesitated. Because the words weren't easy. Not because they were complicated, but because they were true. For choosing to be kind to me, for not making me feel like a burden, even when I wasn't ready to accept this life. You could have built a wall, but instead you offered a seat beside you. You didn't just enter my home, you slowly became its heart. Her eyes softened. She closed her book without saying a word, but the way she looked at me, it was like she'd been waiting to hear that without ever needing to ask. You've seen every side of me, the stubborn parts, the confused parts, the tired parts, and still you stayed quietly, softly, steadily. There was a lump in my throat, but I kept going. You're not here because my father wanted it. You're here because you made something bloom where nothing was supposed to grow. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to fill the space with words. She just reached for my hand, held it gently, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that touch, I felt something settle. Not nerves, not fear, just peace. A feeling that said, you're home now. The days started to feel different after that. Not because anything big changed, not because we made some announcement, but because inside me the weight I had carried for so long, the resentment, the confusion, the sense of being forced, it was gone. I didn't feel trapped anymore. I felt chosen, not just by her, but by life, by something bigger than me that knew exactly what I needed before I ever did. She was no longer the woman my father arranged for me. She was the woman who taught me patience, without saying a word, the one who healed wounds I didn't even know I had. And she did it all without rushing, without demanding, without ever trying to prove her worth. She just was present, consistent, kind. I began showing up differently too. Not just being there physically, but really being there, emotionally, mentally, fully. I started bringing her things she loved. Little surprises, not expensive gifts, but thoughtful ones. A scarf in her favorite color. A snack she once mentioned offhand. A note left beside her tea that simply said, "You bring peace to this house," and her smile when she read it. That smile felt like forgiveness, like we had both been through so much, but somehow we had arrived here on the same page. in the same heart at the same time. I began to understand that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it enters through a back door, sits beside you during dinner, and waits patiently until your heart is ready to notice it. And I noticed fully, finally. She never once asked me to love her, but I did. Slowly, completely, without needing to be told it was the right thing, because now it simply felt like the only